Hey everybody, I'm Anna McEwen. And now for Bob Switzer with the Epic Narrative.
All right, everyone, welcome back to the Epic Narrative. Literally just wiped out 10 minutes of my recording. Why? Because when my wife texts me, I tried to pause it. Why? Because it's my wife and I love her. And it, you know, she knew I was recording and she was like, felt the need to text me. And I was like, well, if she's going to text me when she knows I'm recording, then this must be something vitally important for me to stop recording and review. And it was, I would just say for me, it did not reach that level of importance, considering she had told me about 7 times before she left me to do that particular thing. And then now that it's been a half an hour, she had this incredible desire evidently to be like, no, he needs to stop recording and read this one more time. Glory. If she ever listens to my Epic Narrative, she's going to hear that and be like, what did I do? You didn't have to read it. You didn't have to read it. Yes, I did, dear. I had to read it because it's from you. She knows that. I love her. I do. I can't imagine life without her. We've been together almost 40 years. I think we're at 39 at the time of this recording. So in a lot of ways, I kind of have that framework, right? When I talk about the 40 years in the wilderness, I kind of have that framework. It's like, all right, 40 years. They've been 40 years. Now we're in our 3rd book, okay? We're of this season. At our current rate of how many seasons do you think we get before we're done with the Bible? It's not 1,000. What? Bob, you exaggerate. Well, no, we did 2 books in season 1. We did season 2 and 3 were each 1 book. And then we're doing 3 books in this season. So it should be less than 66 seasons. So you think at 1 a year, I'll die? I'm not going to be dead in 66 years. Dude, anyways, on with the show. I'm not going to argue with Bob anymore. Well, that's not true. I will argue with him because he never leaves me. And sometimes he's really funny. Anyways, we've been together almost 40 years. So in the context of this episode, of this book, Deuteronomy, most Hebrew commentaries and ancient oral traditional sages, etc., they believe that Moses is in the last 5 months of his life. They believe that he is in a place of life where, as he's writing this, when you read the opening line, these are the words that God spoke to Moses. The literary framework of that is Moses is recalling by memory the things that he thinks is really important for this nation. This nation that, I mean, he didn't birth the nation, right? It was birthed by Abraham. But he did bring it through a rebirth when it came out of, I know, so much prophetic insight, out of the nation of Egypt through the water, which of course you have to do in order to be birthed. And they pop out the other side, free of their enemy, standing before their God, all that kind of stuff. I know it is good stuff. Sometimes I make flippant remarks about it because, you know, people write entire books on this kind of stuff, and I appreciate their ability to find every jot and tittle of application and alliteration. But for the sake of us, he kind of rebirthed this nation, and they're his. He also went through 40 years of death with them, which had to be quite an interesting dynamic to your culture. And the current people he's looking at, the oldest would be 60, because everybody under the age of 20 are the only ones that survived. Everybody over the age of 20 is dead over the last 40 years, which is easily could be 1 million people that have died. And when you're a wandering caravan of people. Like, this is a lot. And with all the rules regarding dead bodies, you can understand why they needed it, is because literally, you figure out the math, but I believe it's hundreds of people a day that are dying for 40 years. What would be the math on that? Let's say it's 1 million people divided by 40 years or maybe it's hundreds of people a week. Somebody do the math and get back to me on this. I know I'd have my producer do it, but he won't hear this for a while. And of course, Bob isn't going to do it because he's in my head. And trust me, we do not do math in our head. We barely do math on a calculator. We do not do math on our head. Anyway, it's quite a culture of death, and so as they're moving along, you know, they had to bury these bodies weekly, and they were all family, and they all knew each other and their memories and their stories. So Moses knows he's coming to an end. He knows that most sages believe that this was written about 5 weeks before he left the earth. And we can get into that some other time, but we know that he left the earth. He did not die. The Lord picked him up and took him to heaven. The realms of the universe are so fascinating to me because we always think up and away, but I believe these dimensions and realms are so close. Like, anyways, you could pass through to another dimension. I think pretty. It's not easy because you have to get there. You have to be willing to get there, which takes a lot of discipline. But Moses got there. Bottom line is he was taken to heaven. We'll just leave it at that. We'll deal with that later. Bob's like, man, did you open up a crazy? I know I almost ran down a path then for which there might have been no return to the story, but we're going to go on with the story. So in the last few weeks of his life, he's writing this, and the way that this sentence is put together in the Hebrew, indicates that this is Moses's memory of all that went on and what the Lord said. So these are things that he believes would be important for the next generation to know. Why? Well, because this part of the nation would not have a pillar to follow. There's no pillar of cloud. There's no pillar of fire. So for the last 40 years, not everybody who's alive, because a lot of them have been born as well, but those that had been alive to see the pillar of cloud arrive. Imagine, right? If you were 10, 12, 15 years old, you saw the pillar arrive. You saw the tabernacle be built. You saw all of this, and it was spectacular. Now it's gone. They were not going to have manna every morning and quail every night. Something as though they clearly complained about, but it never stopped. I mean, think about the mercy of God and all of that. Despite all the rebellions and attempted leadership coups and complaints about God and all that stuff, the manna never stopped, the quail never stopped. God, in his goodness, kept reminding them, your behavior doesn't impact my promises. I'll still be there. It may impact, your choices may impact your life, but I'll still be there, and we'll work it out. These guys were not going to have quite, the distance of memory regarding the miracles and the exit of Exodus. A lot of the ones who would have remembered leaving Egypt would have been fairly young. And yes, they would have had a memory, but their memory would have been that of a child versus an adult. Like, my children's memories of some of the journeys that we took, even just let's just say vacations, right, where we drove, like their memories of driving 21 hours to go see their grandparents and spend a week with their aunt or whatever. Far different than my memory of traveling 21 hours in the van with 4 kids and sometimes a dog. Far different. Even when we went to Orlando and had a blast back in the day, like their memory of it, far different than mine. So the memory of the people that were alive for the Exodus is that of a child. So Moses wants, he recognizes that. He's like, we need to remember what the Lord told us to do. Let's see. I got a list here of some things. Oh, they were going to face cultures and concepts that they had not seen in the wilderness. And because a lot of these guys were children, when they left Egypt, they really weren't aware of the culture of Egypt either. So they were going to go into, quote, the promised land, and they were going to interact with people and cultures and religions and traditions and family dynamics that they weren't used to. And this was important, I think, for Moses to communicate with them. And it's important for anyone, when even here in the United States, which is where I'm recording, right? I currently, at the time of this recording, live in an RV, and we move around now. We more so stay at least 6 months now everywhere we go. We try to get work at a campground, hang out for at least 6 months and sometimes longer. But we experience different cultures, and I'll tell you, it's the culture we carry as a couple. And this is not a bragging thing. It's not. This is just who we are. We've been married almost 40 years. We have loved the Lord for most of those 40 years. Like both, she got saved as a teenager. I got saved as good grief, I was 5 years old or whatever. Like we carry a culture that is different than a lot of the cultures that we run into. And what we found is that it takes people longer for us to kind of make connection, because many of the cultures in the RV community are not dynamically connected to family. They are not original marriages. They are not people that, in essence, have lived in church or ministry for so many years. And so we are weird. And I think in a lot of ways, Moses knew this. He goes, you're going to go in. I know the law. Like, I know what I wrote down, all the things that the Lord, gave us. I know this, and he's going to review it for them. But I think in a lot of ways, he's saying, listen, you're going to be the weird ones. But the reason why you're weird is because you are going to be drawing people to a unique relationship with a God who wants a personal connection with everyone. You are going to be the nation that brings all nations to the kingdom of God. And I think that is spectacular, because it's literally something we can apply to every individual and every individual family who knows and loves the Lord. Doesn't matter how many marriages you've had. This is not a judgment on that. But you can create a culture that may take months for people to feel comfortable to be around, but eventually it does start to draw people in. It's fascinating, and it's fun, and it's something we all can do. All right. They're going to be faced with fears that they've never been faced before, or not never, but very seldom. Things like war or battles, skirmishes, raiders. They kind of knew that those things existed, but you can imagine if you were a clan of raiders who went and took advantage of migrant people, gypsy people. If you were there and there were 1 million plus people, like, there easily are stragglers that you could take advantage of. They're weighted down with plunder from Egypt. But there's this pillar of fire at night and this pillar of cloud by day that just, it's just freaky. There's something supernatural about that. And so there was a culture of protection, a shadow of protection that was over them for the last 40 years. And we saw briefly at the end of Numbers that without the pillar of fire, nations began to think, hey, now's our chance. Now's our chance, right? The Midianites, the Moabites, there were several others. I forget what they were. But they decided, hey, let's take a shot at these guys. They're not militarily trained. They have no fortified cities, and they are filled with money and clothing and flocks, and their temple, their tabernacle they put up is covered in gold and silver and bronze and brass, and there's all kinds of things that we can obtain. And there was all kinds of rumors about that ark, trust me. What it contained, the riches that it had. Oh yeah. So they were going to face those kind of fears for the first time. They were also going to have to work. They were going to have to work to live. They were going to work to eat. They were going to have to earn money. They were going to have to plant crops. They were going to have to keep their flocks moving. There was a whole new culture of that. They didn't have to worry about that before. They were going to have to buy clothes. The Lord had miraculously, it says, not one loop of their sandals wore out in 40 years. Now, I love shoes, and there's no way around that. Even on the road that we're on currently, it'll be 3 years in a couple months. And we do have storage. God bless my son. He thought we were going on the road for a year. Him and his wife were like, well, you can have one of our sheds. And, now it's going to be almost 3 years later. We still have completely overtaken their shed. But I go in that shed every once in a while, and it's like, do we keep this? Do we keep this? And I look at I have several Tupperware containers filled with shoes. And trust me, I gave away lots of shoes before I kept the ones I really, really wanted to keep. And I sit there and look at them and I think, I can't get rid of them yet. I can't. I love shoes. I love shoes. It's just, that's just the bottom line. If I had one of those jobs where I had unlimited income like this would be a thing for me. It just would. I know it would be. Especially if I had wealth, I know I'd have a lot of fun with my wealth and give so much of it away, but there would be a closet that if somebody walked in, they'd be like, oh my God, this guy has a problem. Yes, I do. At least I recognize it, and I don't have the money to sustain it. So technically right now you'd never be able to tell unless I confess it to you. And because it's just us talking, it's really not going to be a big deal. All right. Let's see. With the show, buy clothes, buy food, buy shoes. They're gonna spread out. We'll see here that there was the plan from Moses's mouth as a reminder from God's mouth was for them to spread out all over the nations. So they would no longer be a group of 1 million plus people. They would be hundreds of people, and they would be separated by many miles. And Moses was like, hey, you need to follow the rules that I laid out for you, because this is what's going to draw people in. This is what's going to show them and should be showing you that God wants a relationship with you, not a bunch of rule followers. So this is, like I said, very clearly seen as a book where Moses is speaking. Not necessarily the voice of God is speaking. He's just rehearsing, recounting what the voice of God has said. Some call it his last will and testament. He prioritizes what's going to be said and the atmosphere in which it's said, the nuances of the way it's written. So he's emphasizing what he believes that needs to be emphasized. Now, these things are important, I think, to keep in mind as we go forward with the reading of the book. But as you can see, as he goes through all the stuff, he goes, the first few verses, basically, he kind of lays out the time period in which this is taking place. And then he kind of starts recounting. He's like, the Lord said to us at Horeb, you have stayed here long enough at the mountain. Break camp and advance into the hill country. Go to all the neighboring peoples. Da, 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 da. See, I've given you this land. Verse 8. Take possession of the land. The Lord swore he would give to you and your fathers, to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and their descendants after them. So the Lord's saying here, hey, or Moses is remembering that the Lord said, you can't hang out here at the mountain forever. It's time to go. He's like, go possess. Verse 8. I've given you this land. Go take possession of the land. This is not a word that constitutes opposition or war or battles. He doesn't say go battle for the land. He's saying go possess the land. We've talked about this before. The Lord's plan, God's plan, was not for them to create war, but to go in and occupy, to go in and become pockets of culture of a highly relational, loving God that made others in the nation jealous, curious, intrigued. The way the Israelites were supposed to behave to each other and the way that they were supposed to treat foreigners was supposed to bring about a desire of the foreigners to be like them. And again, come to a place where, in essence, the foreign culture would ultimately be overrun by the culture of heaven to the point where it would be annihilated. In other words, completely disappear from memory. And only the culture of heaven would be left. This was the plan. We'll get into what they chose to do instead. Verse 12, he says, but how can I bear your problems and your burdens and your disputes all by myself? So at this time, he's kind of recounting why judges were put over the top of him. And basically, he's like, you guys are very difficult to lead, especially during legal proceedings. Why? Because victims and slaves, nothing's fair. It doesn't matter what the law says. They should be able to do what they want. And we find that a lot in today's culture. You can find it, people not YouTube, they record this victim mentality. We see a lot of police body cameras of people that are victims, and they're just like, they're shocked and amazed that they have to obey the law. And they'll say things like, you can't arrest me. I have to go pick up my baby from daycare. It's like, well, you broke the law. You punched the cop. You've tried to run away. You're going to jail. No, you can't. No, I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to talk to you. He's just like, oh my word. But that's a victim slave mentality. It's like, it doesn't matter what the rules are. Nothing's fair. Nothing's just. I need to defend myself. I need to take care of myself. And you have no rule over me. It's incredibly convoluted because you're overwhelmingly self-oriented. And yet you want the world to comply to your selfish desires. So you have to interact with the world. But you do so from this place of self-hate, really, and self-rejection. It's phenomenal. Anyways, he's like, you guys are really difficult. And teaching you, I had to teach you the laws. You had so many objections. You desired to add personal ideas to the law. These are all things that he talked about why he had to do this. You guys were just all over the place. I told you what the Lord wanted, and you were like, yeah, but can we do this? I don't know if you remember, it was during this season, but we went through a list of people they weren't allowed to have sex with. Do you remember that? It was crazy, the list of people. You can't have sex. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't do that. Why would he need to go through all those details? Because people were like, well, you didn't say I couldn't sleep with her. You didn't say I couldn't sleep with him. You didn't say. It's like, okay, fine. I will cover every detail because you guys are difficult. That's what he's reminding them of. And then in verse 15, he's like, so I took leading men of your tribe, wise and respected men, and appointed them over you to have authority over you, and commanders and thousands of hundreds and of fifties and of tens and of tribal leaders. And I charge your judges at that time, hear the disputes between your people, judge fairly, whether the case be between two Israelites or between an Israelite and a foreigner residing among you. Do not show partiality. Do not be afraid, et cetera, et cetera. If anything's too difficult, bring it to me. So he reviews again. We went over this, and I think it was in the first book of this season. We all the details of that sort of thing. But he's like, I set over all these judges. Now, I read in one commentary that they believe there were per 1,000 people, there were basically 3 judges. There were the ones over 10s, there were ones over 50s, ones over 100s, and then there was the ones over thousands. Like there were a lot of judges to try and break down, because again, difficult people to judge. They were difficult people to reason with, difficult people to oversee. And he kind of lets them know that. And he goes, they were appointed under Jethro's wisdom, right? They were appointed, but they weren't qualified as much as they should be. So Moses was constantly re-educating them, and the judges of the law, not only that, but also in character. He had to constantly work with these judges because, again, that was kind of his role. He went from having to judge 1 million people to having to train and organize and keep an eye on several hundred of them who were over. So like, again, having run small things like conference centers and youth camps and that sort of thing. Even some churches I was involved in where I had whatever, one church, I had 23 youth leaders that were under me. They were amazing people, but still I had to work with them all. And they were fabulous, and I loved them. And we had to have regular meetings. We had official meetings after youth group every night, or every, whatever, Thursday night it was. And then it was, for at least 30 minutes. And then we had monthly meetings at the house where I, buy dinner. Well, we took it out of the budget. I didn't buy them dinner. Let's just be honest, right? How many pastors love doing that? I'll tell you, man, I don't know of a pastor that doesn't take credit when they take personal credit for what they did with the church credit card. It blows my mind every time. Oh man, they talk about, oh, well, I took the, my wife and I took the whatever out for dinner. It was lovely. My wife and I took this. My wife and I did that. My wife and I, we decided to give $1,000 to them. And I'm thinking, I know, because my wife's the bookkeeper, I know all of that was paid for by the church. None of it came out of their pocket. They did not buy 1 ounce of food, drink, or alcohol for that party with anything but the church card. I know this. I know this for fact, right? But they're going to take credit for it because, it just sounds good. It looks good. They don't want the church to know what they're doing with all the church's money. It's ridiculous. Ridiculous. And I don't think even half the church would even care. But, anyways, Bob's like, was that a pet peeve? Yes, it was. Should I have probably said too much? Yes, I probably did. Are we going to unrecord it? No, we're not. Because the odds of anybody hearing it that matters, they can't deny what they did. That's for sure. Anyway. So he had to speak with them. He had to constantly train them. He had to re-educate them. Why? Because they basically feared. They feared men. They wanted to be liked by people. They wanted to be seen as leaders. They wanted to be seen as somebody who could. Sorry, I'm getting a phone call. I'm gonna have to reject this. How do I do this? There. Sorry. Long pause. That one's from my daughter, so I'm definitely going to have to call her back. Because she, Anna McEwen, you meet her every time we start one of these things. She's awesome. So they feared men. They wanted to be seen as, respected. They wanted to be seen as vital to everyone's life. And it's a tough thing. It is. They also feared bodily harm, right? If they judged against somebody that was bigger, stronger, faster than they were. And they feared these things over being just and over being righteous. And because they had the authority, they could be unrighteous and they could be unjust. And there was theoretically nothing anybody could do about it. And then the people that they ruled in favor of would owe them. And that often, again, happens in ministry where decisions are made and they're made in an unjust manner. Decisions, sometimes elders make decisions regarding pastors' salaries and benefits because they want to control the pastor. And sometimes the pastor makes decisions about buildings and who gets to be where because they want that person to owe them. They want, I'm going to put so-and-so on this committee. I'm going to put so-and-so under this office because they know that person wants that office and then that person will be beholden to them. It happens so easy. For some people, it's like breathing. They don't even see it. And for some, it's done calculatedly. Either way, Moses is like, listen, you weren't easy to judge, and the judges weren't as qualified as I'd hoped they'd be. But on we went, and we will go on with the show next week. On the Epic Narrative, we will continue chapter 1 of the Book of Deuteronomy. Have yourself a great day, everyone.
Don't go anywhere. We've got Bob Thoughts.
Well, what do you think? We're almost done. Yeah, you realize that? We're almost done. This is awesome. You guys are awesome. Thanks for sticking with us through all of this. I have a couple things not really related to the episode today, although I do hope you enjoyed it. One, on my YouTube channel, which is available to everyone, you can find the links in my various, on the bobswitzer.com. You can find it wherever we tell you. My Instagram page, my Facebook page. Anyways, on my Facebook page, on my YouTube page, The Epic Narrative, there's a playlist that has, it's called Pastors Talking, under the playlist file. And there is a 10-part series that I did for what I call like the calling of being a pastor, somebody who is gifted in the pastoral realm, not somebody who got the title. You can get a title for breathing in some churches. If you're willing to walk down the children's ministry hallway twice a month, it's like, yes, you're a pastor now. Not that kind of pastor. I'm talking about a pastor as listed in Ephesians, where you see what's often called the fivefold ministry. So you see the apostle, prophet, pastor, teacher, and evangelist. Now, those are not a hierarchy. It's not a list of important to least important. It's supposed to be the family that God has designed to work together in leadership of the body. And unfortunately, most people get an apostle as their leader because, generally speaking, they drive vision and people line up behind that vision, and then they're like, be our leader. And then you get into the whole hierarchy thing, and we talk about that enough on the Epic Narrative. So anyways, if you think you might be a pastor, or if you want, like, whatever, you can pass it on to other people. A pastor, the best way for me to describe it, as I am one, we intuitively understand the relational impact of every decision that's made. We don't necessarily voice it, but we know what's going to happen. As soon as somebody does something, we think, oh, I know who that's going to impact, both positively and negatively. That, to me, speaks to somebody who is a gifted pastors. So that's a 10-part series, which is long. It's about an hour each one. But I do it in a conversation with another gifted pastor. His name's Jerry. He's from Australia. We met each other through a ministry, ironically enough, that wanted the ministry we did it for, and you'll hear me mention it in the training. It was called Revive the Way. It still is called Revive the Way, but they were like, can you produce some content that we can pass on to pastors so that they can understand what a pastor is and how a pastor works and yada, yada, yada. And I was like, yeah, but it took me a while because I don't think in terms of outlines easily. I think in terms of storylines. But Jerry does think in outlines. So when I met Jerry, it just, I don't know, just made sense. So I asked him if he'd like to do this thing together. And so he does a great job of keeping us on track. I would have been all over the place. But he did a great job. And I love Jerry. I love being connected to him. And yeah, so there you go. Check it out. Pass it on. I mean, yeah, there could be lots of uses for it. The ministry, Revive the Way, decided not to use it. After we did all 10 hours of it, they were like, nah, we don't need it. And I hung on to it, I don't know, for about a year, I think. And then I was like, I just need to put this somewhere. So I put it on YouTube. And there it is. It's basically Zoom calls. So you get to see my face, which you don't get to do in a podcast. You don't get to see my face. The other thing I want to tell you is I did repost the link to season 1, a bonus episode called Jesus in the Temple. I did it during Holy Week. So it was a few weeks ago. But just in case you're wondering about it, it is in season 1. I believe it's right around episode 23 or 24. It's just a bonus. It was stuck in there. Doesn't have any number. But I was super triggered because so many people love Jesus getting angry because it gives them an excuse to be angry. And they say, well, Jesus flipped the tables over in the temple. And it's like, oh. I mean, when I first started believing Jesus was God, and he is, and I believe that God is always good, and I believe he is. Jesus in the temple was one of the stories I went to Holy Spirit with. I was like, hey, you've got an issue here. And he was like, yeah, please look into that. And as soon as I started looking into it, it was like, oh my gosh, there's no way he was angry. Like, this is all human application to words so that they have an excuse to have an angry God, and they have an excuse to be angry and say, well, I'm just doing what Jesus did in the temple. No, you're not. So if you want to listen to it, that's where it is. It's also, I posted it on my Facebook page. You can probably scroll down and find it. Also posted it on my Instagram page. Easy to find there too. But on the Instagram page, of course, you don't have a live link. So anyways, there you go. I think you guys are awesome. I will, I'll see you guys next week on The Epic Narrative. Thanks so much for listening.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening. If you like what you heard, you can subscribe to this podcast on any platform you use. You can also reach out to Bob for questions or booking at thebobswitzer.com or email him at thebobswitzer@gmail.com. See you next week, guys.